Christina Simpson Ramirez and Matthew Dowd are back with me. So, Matthew, you're in the crowd literally laughing out loud when Senator Chuck Grassley said Elon Musk has no power. Are you surprised by the level of anger that's spilling out at Republican town halls?
No, but I actually am encouraged, if anybody is worried about where our country is headed, the fact that Republicans are now getting laughed at when they make their, statements that are just patently false. The idea that Elon Musk has no power. I guess he was referring to Elon Musk doesn't have a constitutional office, but he has, we did discussion that we had before, he has more power than just about anybody in America or in the world right now. I think Republicans are miscalculating where they've ended up in this process. What I think this shows us, it shows us two fundamental things, I think, is one, that the Democrats and independents across the country have basically decided enough's enough, that they want to hold these members accountable. No one else is holding them accountable. And so there's this great negative view of Republicans, Elon Musk, and the president. That's one hand. The other hand is that many Democrats and many independents don't trust the Democratic Party leadership right now to do what is necessary in order to stop the cuts to Social Security, in order to stop the cuts to the veterans to benefits, in order to stop the attacks on unions, in order to stop all of these things that are happening. They don't trust, not only do they not trust Republicans, they think Republicans are doing this out of mean-spiritedness, they also don't trust the Democratic leadership, and they're trying to lead the way of where we need to go in order to preserve our democracy. And I think it's both things.
Let me just point out that a lot of Republicans in leadership, lawmakers and the like, they're saying that, there are Democrats that are flooding these town halls and they're the ones that are creating the issues and, making the most noise and the like. Is it clear it's Republican voters who are angry, and who are they mad at?
I don't think it's Republican voters that are angry. I think the polls, there may be some, but I think the polls show that Republican voters, the base still has a 92% approval of Donald Trump. I think it's mainly Democrats who are very energized, and independents who've gone from supporting the president to now by 2-1 opposing the president. And so it's a turn of those figures. These are districts. These are some very Republican districts, but these are districts, some of the districts that also, in order for the Republicans to keep the House and the Senate in the states, they have to win these voters over, many of these voters over. And so if Republicans point out that they blame it on George Soros or say it's Democrats flooding it, I think they're ignoring it at their own peril come the midterms.
So Democratic lawmakers were also on the receiving end this week. You had voters in Virginia, Maryland, and Colorado all expressing frustration that Democrats are not doing enough. Here's a little bit of that.
Let us know what's happening within the Democratic caucus right now, how much support there is for Senator Schumer. And because I feel like his ratings are low, I feel like we need a change. We're looking for something different.
I would have liked to hear the plan instead of a little bit of tooting their horns and saying the things that they are doing and the things that we can do. This was not the leadership that we
Republicans
all
aren't there
hope for.
Hey, we're not going to do it this way. We're not going to do it this way.
Christina, do Democratic leaders have a plan that they're just not properly articulating? What do voters want in the plan?
Well, I think what I see overall is that the American people are angry, whether they're Democrats or Republicans or independents. They're angry at our political system, which feels like there's not enough response to the level of corruption we're seeing, and also to their real economic pain. I think a lot of Democrats feel like there's not a strong enough plan forward by Democrats, especially communities that are really being impacted by the impacts of DOGE. And I also think from some Republicans, look, in these Republican districts, I think a lot of people are angry are Republicans. You have 72 million Americans that are on Medicaid that realize it's now on the chopping block. And GOP candidates live in districts with more Americans on Medicaid than Democrats. And so if they don't address what Elon Musk is doing, they're going to face peril. But I think Democrats cannot wait for Trump and Elon Musk to bumble their way through this and hope that that gets them to win. Americans are angry. They want to see a fighting party. They want to see candidates that are fighting for them and that are standing up to the corruption that exists in how our politics are funded in the first place. The truth is that Republicans receive a lot more money from billionaires than Democrats, but this is why you have huge crowds for Bernie Sanders and AOC that are seen as more independent in how they're funded. And that, I think, ultimately is a winning message for Democrats to talk about political corruption in both parties and how they're going to deliver on working class issues and middle class issues, because ultimately it's all about economic pain for Americans.
There is another big story I want to run by you, Christina, this week. It is the removal of more than 200 migrants from Texas to a maximum security prison in El Salvador. The Financial Times reports families say deportees had signed paperwork to return to Venezuela, but they were taken to jail instead. And a federal judge is now trying to sort through the legality of all these deportations. What are you hearing, though, about the impact of this in immigrant communities?
This is a huge, wide, and chilling effect. And I think people should realize this is about immigrant communities and goes far beyond immigrant communities. Imagine you're a Venezuelan citizen. You've now been disappeared, and disappeared is the right word, into these prison systems in El Salvador. These are some of the most cruel, inhumane prisons in the world, documented by Amnesty International and other human rights groups. Some advocates fear these prisoners may never leave. It's not like they didn't just get due process here in the United States. Many of them may never get due process in El Salvador because El Salvador doesn't believe in due process. So they're now in a foreign country with no ability or clear pathway to advocate for their rights or ask to be returned to their homeland or have their cases come back to the United States. And let's take a second and realize that this, again, is not just about undocumented immigrants. You had Trump call this week for those that were participated in those acts against those Tesla cars and facilities to be sent to these same prisons, to be disappeared into a system without due process. These are things that we saw in regimes and authoritarian regimes in Latin America, around the world. And now we see the president pushing forward policies like that for immigrants. But that's the test case for also American citizens that have more rights.
Let me ask you, Matthew, about the 4 New York Times conservative columnists who offered their opinions on why Trump voters are sticking with him. They say Republicans buy into the idea that everything is broken and we just need to burn it all down. And many Republicans, sadly, want their opponents to suffer. And they believe Trump's agenda tracks with Ronald Reagan's, and that what most Americans notice are Trump's actions. He's bombing, tariffing, strong-arming, threatening, and abolishing. Do you agree, Matthew? Is cruelty what conservative voters want?
Well, I wouldn't call them conservative voters anymore because they don't stand for what the conservative principles of a party that I watch, of Reagan and Eisenhower and others. They're not conservative voters. They're cultural populists. That's what they are in the course of this. And I agree with most of what's in the article. The cruelty is the point. As long as you are being mean to somebody they hate or they don't like, you can do all sorts of other things for a while. As Christina said, for a while, until their own pocketbook or their health care or something else is affected. But cruelty is the point, and meanness is the point. And the reason why Donald Trump is leading the Republican Party is because he is seen as the biggest bully, meanest, cruelest person on the planet. And they like that as long as it's aimed at their opponents.
Okay, Matthew, Christina, it's good to talk with you both. I know I'll see you both again soon. Thank you.